Get this welfare trash out of here. The sentence tore through the music like glass shattering against marble. Dozens of champagne flutes froze midair. Every head in the Whitmore Heritage Gala turned toward the sound, cold, sharp, and dripping with disgust. At the center of the storm stood Malik Grant, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black tuxedo that fit like armor. Across from him, Eleanor Whitmore, matriarch of one of America's oldest billionaire families, stared him down, her diamond earrings trembling as if echoing her fury. The crimson smear on her sleeve told the truth. Her son had stumbled into Malik, spilling red wine over her gown. But she didn't care. She needed someone to blame. And in this room, the black man standing too close was the easiest target. No one breathed. The string quartet stopped mid-note. A few guests exchanged nervous glances, others whispered, "Who is he?" Eleanor stepped closer, her voice rising. "You people think you can buy your way into class. Money doesn't change what you are. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Malik Grant. He didn't blink. The mark of her slap still burned faintly on his cheek, but his eyes stayed steady, deep, controlled, dangerous in their calm. He reached for a napkin, wiped his face once, and set it down neatly on the marble table. "Are you finished?" he asked, voice low but cutting. A man near the bar muttered, "Isn't that the guy from Grant Technologies?" His date scoffed. "He doesn't look like someone who runs billion-dollar deals." Malik heard them. He'd heard it all before in banks, hotels, boardrooms. "10 francs chandelier. Sans prejudice." Eleanor folded her arms, mocking him. "You don't belong in this room." Malik tilted his head slightly. "Funny," he said. "That's exactly what I was thinking about your values." Gasps rippled across the room. A few phones came up. A server froze in place, torn between duty and disbelief. Eleanor snapped at security, "Get him out now!" But the guards hesitated. One of them whispered, "Ma'am, I think that's the sponsor." Her face paled. "The what?" Malik straightened his jacket, eyes never leaving hers. "You just called welfare trash the man funding your family's future." He pulled out his phone. "Cassandra," he said evenly, "activate Protocol 12. The chandeliers flickered. Screens around the ballroom lit up with a single logo, Grant Technologies' main sponsor. Whispers erupted. Cameras rolled. The orchestra lowered their bows. And in that moment, beneath gold ceilings and centuries of arrogance, the balance of power in the room began to change forever. The room was no longer quiet, it was trembling. Whispers spread like static as the screens around the ballroom flickered with the logo Grant Technologies' main sponsor. Eleanor Whitmore froze. For the first time in her life, words failed her. Her son Richard looked at the glowing displays, then at Malik Grant, his face draining of color. "Mother," he muttered, "what did you just do?" But Eleanor didn't answer. She just stared at Malik, still trying to convince herself that the man standing before her, the one she'd just called welfare trash, wasn't the person holding her empire's future in his hands. Malik didn't move right away. He let the silence do the work. Every breath in the room seemed to wait for his next word. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, calm enough to sting. "You insulted me," he said, "in a building funded by my company's money. You slapped me in front of people whose futures depend on mine. Tell me, Miss Whitmore, what exactly do you think happens next?" No one dared to speak. A young journalist standing by the floral arch raised her phone a little higher. A security guard lowered his hands, realizing he'd been ordered to remove the wrong man. Near the bar, a senator's wife whispered, "Oh my God, he owns them." Eleanor tried to recover. "This is all a misunderstanding," she stammered, forcing a brittle laugh. "I didn't realize who you were." Malik's gaze hardened. "That's the problem," he said. "You didn't need to know who I was to know how to treat me." The air cracked. No one clapped, but the weight of truth pressed through the crowd like heat. From the corner, Malik's assistant Cassandra approached quietly, her phone still open. "Sir, the board has been notified. Protocol 12 has reached stage 2. The event feed is now live across every Grant Tech platform." Malik nodded once. "Good." Eleanor's husband, Gregory Whitmore Sr., appeared at her side, red-faced and shaking. "Mr. Grant, please, let's not make a spectacle of this. We've had a long partnership." "No," Malik cut in gently but firmly. "You've had control, not partnership." Cameras clicked. Guests shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to look at Eleanor or the man she'd tried to erase. Malik turned slowly toward the crowd. "I've spent years watching rooms like this mistake silence for submission. I built a $1 billion company from the ground up so no one could decide where I belong. He glanced back at Eleanor, his voice lowering. And tonight, you proved exactly why I did. Eleanor's lips parted, but no sound came. Around her, the Whitmore heirs looked away, faces pale under the chandeliers. Malik adjusted his cufflink, that same small gesture of control. Cassandra, he said, initiate Protocol 13. Good. Yes, sir, she replied. The screens changed again. This time, they displayed a message in white over black. Notice of contract termination effective immediately. A ripple of gasps tore through the ballroom. Someone whispered, he just killed a $1 billion deal. Malik didn't correct them. He simply said, no, I just refuse to sell my dignity for one. And with that, he turned toward the exit. No shouting, no revenge speech. Just footsteps measured, deliberate echoing across marble floors that had never carried power like his before. Behind him, the Whitmores stood still, watching the man they'd tried to humiliate walk away, taking their fortune, and their silence with him. Outside the ballroom, the night air felt heavier than it should have. Malik Grant stepped through the grand doors and into the marble foyer, his reflection trailing him across the polished floor. He didn't stop walking, not when people whispered, not when cameras followed. He'd learned long ago that silence could be louder than any microphone. Behind him, chaos rippled through the gala. Guests spilled from the doors in glittering waves, desperate to understand what had just happened. A reporter shouted his name. Mr. Grant, is it true you just terminated the Whitmore deal? Malik didn't answer. He kept moving until the noise dulled into a low hum behind him. Cassandra caught up, her heels striking quick, anxious rhythms against the marble. Sir, she said softly, the live feed's gone viral. Every major outlet has picked it up, CNBC, Forbes, The Atlantic. They're calling it the slap heard around Wall Street. Malik exhaled slowly. Then let them hear it. He stopped by a tall glass window overlooking the city. The skyline stretched out before him, endless and indifferent. For a moment, his reflection merged with the tower's black suit against black glass. A man who'd spent his life building something no one could take from him. You okay? Cassandra asked, her tone softer now. Malik smiled faintly. I'm fine. I've been here before, just not with this many witnesses. He thought of the first time he'd been dismissed from a room 20 years ago, in a midtown board meeting when he'd been told, you're smart, Malik, but not a good fit for our culture. Quote, he'd walked out of that building with nothing but a prototype laptop and a fire that hadn't gone out since. Now the same people who once closed doors on him were about to call, pretending they'd always believed in his vision. Cassandra's phone buzzed again. It's PR, she said. They're asking if we should issue a statement. Malik shook his head. No, let the truth stand on its own, no press spin, no damage control. She hesitated. You know they'll come after you, right? The Whitmores don't lose quietly. Malik looked out over the skyline again. They just did. A limousine pulled up to the curb outside, the driver stepping out, phone to his ear. The flash of cameras from across the street grew brighter. Cassandra turned to Malik. They're still filming. Good, he said. Let them see what power looks like when it doesn't need to yell. He walked toward the exit, the automatic doors parting with a whisper. The crowd outside parted, two reporters, guests, bystanders, all watching the man they'd just seen defy an empire. One journalist called out, Mr. Grant, do you regret it? Malik paused, just for a second, the city's lights catching in his eyes. No, he said. Regret is what you feel when you trade respect for money. I don't do that anymore. He stepped into the limousine, Cassandra following close behind. As the doors closed, the sounds of the gala faded, completely replaced by the hum of the city and the certainty that something had shifted. Inside the car, Cassandra whispered, you know this will change everything. Malik looked out the window, voice steady. That's the point. The limo rolled into the night, leaving behind a ballroom full of diamonds, fear, and broken legacies, and one man who proved that dignity doesn't beg for entry. It builds the door. The limousine cut through the city lights, its reflection gliding across the glass towers like a shadow that refused to disappear. Inside, Malik Grant sat in silence, one hand resting on his knee, the other scrolling through notifications flooding his phone. Mentions, articles, headlines. Every outlet had it, the slap that shook Wall Street. Cassandra glanced over from the opposite seat, her voice cautious. Sir, Whitmore Group just released a statement. They're claiming you overreacted, calling it a misunderstanding. Malik almost smiled. Of course they are. The powerful never apologize first. They explain. He set the phone down and stared out the window. The city moved like electricity, constant, cold, alive. Somewhere behind those towers were boardrooms filled with people who used to look past him, the same people now typing his name into their search bars to see if they'd just lost their biggest investor. Cassandra leaned forward. "We've got a full day tomorrow. Media requests, shareholders, the ethics board wants to meet. Do you want to cancel the summit?" "No," Malik said. "We don't cancel truth, we clarify it." The car slowed at a red light near the park. A small crowd had already gathered on the corner, phones raised toward the tinted window. Malik's face glowed faintly in the reflection of their screens, strangers capturing the face of a man who refused to bow. He looked tired, but not defeated. "You know what's strange?" he said quietly. "I built this company so people couldn't treat me like I didn't belong. But even now, they'll say I played the race card, that I ruined a partnership out of pride." Cassandra didn't respond right away. "You didn't ruin it," she said. "You ended it. That's not pride. That's choice." Malik nodded, eyes distant. "They'll write their version tonight. Tomorrow we'll write ours." The light turned green. The limo pulled into the private drive leading to Grant Technologies' headquarters, a black glass tower rising against the skyline, its logo glowing like a promise. Security guards opened the door as Malik stepped out. Even in the midnight chill, the staff waiting at the entrance straightened, murmuring his name. He greeted each with a quiet nod. No theatrics. The marble lobby was silent except for the echo of his shoes. Inside his office, floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over Manhattan. Cassandra placed a tablet on his desk. "You've got calls from investors in Tokyo and Berlin," she said. "Everyone wants to know what happens next." Malik loosened his tie and sat down. "Tell them business continues, but our definition of partnership just changed." He turned his chair toward the window. "When you strip power from a man, you expect him to beg for it back," he said softly. "But when he doesn't, when he stands there, silent, that's when the world panics." "Cray." Cassandra smiled faintly. "You think they're panicking now?" "Oh, they're terrified," Malik replied, his voice almost a whisper. "Because tonight they realized I don't need their rooms anymore, they need mine." Below them, New York pulsed restless, lit, alive, and somewhere within that rhythm, a new kind of legacy had just begun to write itself. Morning came too quickly. By the time the sun lifted above Manhattan, the storm had already arrived, not in thunder, but in headlines. "Billion-dollar deal implodes after Gala scandal." "Who really runs Whitmore Group now?" "Malik Grant. Arrogance or awakening?" Every screen in Grant Technologies' lobby glowed with news alerts. Every employee moving like they were part of history in motion. The story wasn't just trending, it was transforming. From his office on the 48th floor, Malik watched the coverage unfold without sound. He didn't need commentary, he'd seen that performance before. The polished anchors, the faux concern, the subtext too familiar to miss. A black man with power must have gone too far. Cassandra entered quietly, a coffee in one hand, a folder in the other. "They're calling for an emergency investor meeting," she said. "Half the board wants to issue an apology. The other half wants to double down." Malik turned from the window. "Apologize for what being disrespected in public?" She sighed. "You know how optics work." He smiled faintly. "Optics only matter to people still pretending they can't see." He took the folder and flipped it open, projected stock losses, media reactions, market analyses, numbers bleeding red. He set it aside. "They'll recover," he said. "Integrity always outperforms panic." Cassandra hesitated. "There's something else. Whitmore Group just filed a statement claiming your reaction violated your sponsorship terms." Malik raised an eyebrow. "They're suing?" "Threatening too," she said. "It's posturing. They're scared." Malik leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Good. Fear is the first step to accountability." A notification pinged on his monitor. A live feed request. CNBC wanted him on air to clarify his position. Cassandra watched his expression. "You should let PR handle it." "No," he said calmly. "This isn't a PR problem, it's a pattern." He stood, buttoning his jacket. "Book it, I'll speak." Quote. 10 minutes later, the camera light blinked red in the company studio. Malik adjusted his mic, voice smooth but unshakable. "Mr. Grant," the anchor began. "Critics say your actions cost both companies billions. Do you regret walking away?" Malik's answer was instant. "No, I regret nothing. A deal built on disrespect is already bankrupt, it just hasn't been audited yet." The anchor blinked. "So this wasn't personal?" "It was entirely personal," Malik said, "because dignity always is. But it's also professional, because no company that tolerates prejudice deserves partnership." The studio fell silent. Then Malik leaned forward slightly. "You asked about money. Here's the truth. Power doesn't come from the people who sign the check. It comes from the people who can afford to tear it up. When the broadcast ended, Cassandra met him at the door. That went viral before you even stood up. Malik smiled. Good. Let the world see what it looks like when we stop asking for seats and start building our own tables. Outside, the city kept humming, unaware that a single televised sentence had just changed the way power spoke its name. The interview had barely ended when Malik Grant's phone started to vibrate non-stop. By noon, his words were everywhere, clipped, quoted, looped on every major network and shared across every feed. The image of him sitting calm under the studio lights, saying, "A deal built on disrespect is already bankrupt," had already become a meme and a rallying cry. Cassandra walked beside him through the executive corridor, a dozen notifications lighting up her tablet. The phones haven't stopped. Reporters, shareholders, politicians, even advocacy groups are calling. You've started something, Malik. He didn't slow his stride. No, he said quietly. They started it. I just refused to play along. Quote. They reached the conference floor. Inside, the board of Grant Technologies sat around a polished black table, tense and whispering. The oldest member, Victor Hall, cleared his throat when Malik entered. Malik, he began, choosing his words carefully. We admire how you handled yourself, but there's concern about fallout. We're facing a market slide and potential litigation. We can't afford... Can't afford what? Malik interrupted. Integrity? The room went still. Victor shifted uncomfortably. Our job is to protect shareholder value. And mine, Malik said, is to protect what built it. He placed both hands on the table, voice even but powerful. This company didn't rise because we played nice. It rose because we played fair and we never sold our principles for profit. If that's too expensive, maybe we've all been measuring value wrong. The silence that followed wasn't resistance, it was reflection. Cassandra watched as several members lowered their eyes, guilt settling where greed used to be. Finally, a young executive, Natalie Rhodes, spoke up. Maybe he's right, she said. If we lose money standing for something, at least people will know what we stand for. Malik nodded once. Exactly, we rebuild from there. A soft ping came from the wall screen, a live update flashing. Whitmore Group stock plummets 27% in 24 hours. A ripple of surprise ran through the boardroom. Cassandra turned to Malik. They're collapsing. He didn't smile, but his eyes sharpened. That's what happens when arrogance runs out of investors. The board meeting ended not with a vote, but with conviction. Malik stepped out into the hallway, Cassandra beside him. You just turned this into a movement, she said. People are calling it the Grant Standard, using business as a measure of ethics. Malik chuckled softly. They can call it whatever they want, as long as they remember why it started. They paused near the glass elevator. The skyline stretched wide before them, glowing in late afternoon light. Cassandra looked at him. So what now? He glanced down at the city, the streets that had once looked too big for him. Now we build differently, he said. No more partnerships that require silence. Quote. As the elevator doors closed, Malik's reflection split across the glass, one man, two worlds, the one that had rejected him and the one he was building to replace it. And for the first time in years, the power between them finally felt equal. That evening, Malik didn't go home. He stayed in his office long after the rest of the building went dark, the skyline stretching beyond the glass like a living pulse. Down below, traffic hummed the sound of a city that thrived on stories like his. The viral interview had done more than spark debate, it had drawn battle lines. Half the internet hailed him as a hero. The other half called him arrogant, a man who'd weaponized identity for profit. Malik scrolled through the comments, each one colder than the last. It wasn't the hate that bothered him, it was the pattern. You try to speak with dignity, he murmured, and they call it defiance. Quote. Cassandra knocked softly before stepping in. You've been at it for hours. I know, he said, but look at this. He turned the screen toward her. A trending tag read number boycott Whitmore. Underneath it, thousands of posts from entrepreneurs, employees, and customers across industries shared their own stories banks that profiled them, partners who ignored them, meetings they were never invited to. This isn't about me anymore, Malik said. It's about everyone who's been told they didn't belong in a room they helped build. Cassandra sat across from him. Then what's the next move? We make sure this moment doesn't fade like a headline, he replied. We turn it into structure. She raised an eyebrow. Structure? Accountability, he clarified. We'll create a verification system not for wealth but for ethics. Businesses that prove equity and fairness get certified. Real change starts with record keeping. Cree? Cassandra nodded slowly. The Grant standard, literally. He smiled faintly. Let's make it more than a slogan. She leaned forward. You realize this means you'll have to face them again, the people who humiliated you. Malik looked back out at the city. Good. The only thing worse than being disrespected is letting them believe they got away with it. His phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed across the screen. He hesitated, then answered. Grant, quote. A familiar voice came through, low, strained, but unmistakable. Mr. Grant, this is Richard Whitmore. Cassandra's eyes widened. Richard continued. My mother's, unwell. The fallout's been brutal. Our company's bleeding. I need to talk off record. Malik stayed silent for a long moment. You should have thought about that before you called security. I know, Richard said. That's why I'm calling now. I can't undo what she did, but maybe we can stop it from destroying everything. Coup 1. Malik's tone softened, but only slightly. This isn't about saving a company, it's about saving a conscience. If you're ready for that, come tomorrow morning alone. He hung up and set the phone down. Cassandra exhaled. You really think he'll show? Malik nodded once. Guilt always does. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the glass. The night no longer felt like an ending, it felt like the beginning of an audit, and Malik Grant was ready to balance the books. The next morning, the city was gray and heavy with rain, the kind that muted horns, hurried footsteps, and apologies. At 8:03 a.m., Richard Whitmore arrived at Grant Technologies headquarters, drenched despite the umbrella clenched in his fist. Security guided him through the glass doors, their expressions tight but polite. Everyone in the lobby knew who he was, the heir of the empire that had crumbled overnight. Upstairs, Malik stood by the window, hands in his pockets, watching the storm ripple across the skyline. He didn't turn around when the door opened. Mr. Whitmore, he said evenly, you're early, that's new. Richard swallowed hard. Thank you for seeing me. Cassandra, standing beside Malik, gave a curt nod before stepping aside to give them space. The air in the room felt charged, not hostile, but sharp with unfinished business. Malik gestured to a chair. Sit, quote. Richard hesitated before obeying. His suit was damp, his composure fraying. My family is in chaos, he began. Our stock's in free fall. Clients are pulling out. My mother's had 3 panic attacks since last night. Malik turned, finally meeting his eyes. I warned her. Every system that protects arrogance eventually collapses under its own weight. Richard nodded, jaw tight. I know, and I'm not here to defend her. What she did was inexcusable. He took a shaky breath. I'm here because I want to fix what we broke. My father built that company with integrity before the name started, meaning entitlement. I want to make it right. Malik studied him for a moment, weighing sincerity against survival instinct. Make it right how? Let me work with you, Richard said. We'll restructure the Whitmore Foundation under Grant Technologies' ethical framework. New board, new code, full transparency, you lead it. Cassandra's eyebrows lifted slightly. You're offering him control of your family's charity? Richard nodded. It's the only way to prove we've changed, to show this isn't just PR. Malik stepped closer, voice low. Change doesn't start with signatures or donations. It starts with surrender. Are you ready to do that, Richard? Richard's voice cracked. If that's what it takes. Malik studied him again, then looked to Cassandra. Draft a joint audit plan. If they're serious, we'll oversee the transition. But we don't partner this time, we supervise. Cassandra nodded, already typing. Richard exhaled in relief. Thank you. You won't regret this. Malik turned back to the window, his reflection merging with the storm outside. I don't do this for regret or revenge, he said. I do it because power means nothing if it doesn't teach. As Richard stood to leave, Malik's tone sharpened just slightly. Tell your mother I wish her well, but she'll learn that humiliation and accountability are sometimes the same thing. Richard froze at the door, then nodded quietly and walked out. When the door shut, Cassandra spoke first. You believe him? Malik shook his head. I believe in pressure. Let's see who he becomes under it. Outside, thunder rolled over Manhattan, not a warning, but a reckoning. By noon, the rain had stopped, but the storm hadn't. The Whitmore family scandal had evolved from a trending headline into a full-blown public reckoning. News drones hovered outside both corporate towers, reporters clustered beneath umbrellas, and op-eds dissected the incident like a cultural autopsy. Inside Grant Technologies, Malik's team was working at full throttle. Cassandra paced the operations floor, coordinating with lawyers, auditors, and PR leads. Every phone call began with the same question. Is it true he's taking over the Whitmore Foundation? Upstairs, Malik stood in the boardroom, staring at the digital map projected across the glass wall, a web of subsidiaries, donations, and shell accounts. Pull every file they've buried, he said. If we're cleaning house, we start with the foundation's books. One analyst hesitated. Sir, that could expose things they don't even know about. Malik turned. That's the point. The team got to work. Screens flickered, code lines ran, and a quiet tension filled the air, not fear, but focus. Malik watched, silent but commanding, every movement precise. At 12:47 p.m., Cassandra's tablet pinged. She frowned, scrolling. You need to see this. Malik leaned over her shoulder. On the screen was a bank transfer record, millions moved offshore to a private account in Geneva. The signature at the bottom read E. Whitmore. He exhaled through his nose, controlled but cold. They were laundering through their own charity. Cassandra nodded. Looks like years of it, hidden under cultural investments. Malik walked to the window, his reflection framed by storm clouds breaking over the skyline. I gave them a chance to rebuild, he said quietly. Instead, they proved why collapse was overdue. Do you want me to leak it? Cassandra asked. He shook his head. No, truth doesn't need noise. It needs witnesses. A moment later, the intercom buzzed. Sir, the receptionist said, there's someone here asking for you. It's Eleanor Whitmore. Cassandra's eyes widened. She came here? Alone? Malik didn't flinch. Send her up. Minutes later, the elevator doors opened, and the woman who'd humiliated him in front of 100 million screens stepped into his building. She looked smaller now, not from age, but from aftermath. Her once perfect posture sagged beneath the weight of consequences. Mr. Grant, she began, voice brittle, I owe you an apology. Malik regarded her evenly. That's overdue. She stepped forward. You've made your point. My family's ruined. The press won't stop calling. Please, I need this to end. Malik's expression didn't change. End? He repeated. This isn't punishment, Miss Whitmore. This is exposure. What you're feeling isn't my doing, it's your reflection. She closed her eyes, trembling. What do you want from me? I already have what I want, he said quietly. The truth. And now, you'll help me show it. She looked up, uncertain. Show it how? Malik turned to Cassandra. Prepare the files, we're going public, together. Eleanor's breath caught. You expect me to confess? I expect you to do what privilege never does, Malik said. Be accountable. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the city beyond the glass. Eleanor didn't nod, but she didn't refuse either. And in that moment, for the first time, power began to look something like repentance. The press conference was set for 5 p.m. sharp. By 4:30, every major outlet in New York had a crew outside Grant Technologies. The lobby gleamed under the camera lights, filled with reporters, investors, and curious onlookers who wanted to witness what justice looked like when it wore a suit. Malik stood behind the stage curtain, calm, composed, reviewing the final statement on his tablet. Cassandra hovered nearby, headset on, giving last-minute instructions to the media team. We're live across 7 platforms, she said. Every network, every business channel, even international. He nodded once. Then let's make it count. Quote, a few feet away, Eleanor Whitmore sat quietly in a gray tailored dress, the same woman who'd called him welfare trash less than 48 hours earlier. The diamonds were gone, replaced by a plain silver bracelet. She looked like someone who'd lost not only her fortune but her certainty of what it meant to have power. Malik glanced at her. You can still walk away, he said evenly. Eleanor shook her head. You were right. This has to be public. Quote, he studied her face, no arrogance left, just exhaustion. For the first time, he believed she might actually mean it. At exactly 5, Cassandra gave the cue. Malik stepped onto the small stage, lights hitting his face, the hum of microphones rising. The crowd went silent. 2 nights ago, Malik began, I was told I didn't belong in a room I helped fund. That moment wasn't unique. It's the story of countless people dismissed, diminished, or denied, simply because someone decided they didn't look the part. The camera zoomed in, he continued, voice steady, deliberate. What happened at the Whitmore Gala was more than an insult. It was a mirror. And what it reflected was a system that confuses wealth with worth. Behind him, the screen lit up with the Grant Technologies logo and, beside it, the Whitmore Foundation crest. Eleanor Whitmore walked out slowly, standing beside Malik under the lights. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Eleanor took the microphone with trembling hands. 2 days ago, I said words I can never take back. I humiliated a man I didn't see, not because he was invisible, but because I refused to look. I've spent my life in rooms built to protect me from consequence. Tonight, I'm standing in one that doesn't. The room held its breath. Malik's gaze stayed fixed ahead, unflinching. Eleanor turned toward him. Mr. Grant, I was wrong. and I'm ready to make it right. Not in private, but here, in front of everyone. Malik spoke again, his tone low, resonant. Accountability doesn't erase the past, but it can build the foundation for a different future. That's why today Grant Technologies will assume full oversight of the Whitmore Foundation, restructuring it into the Equity Trust Initiative, a nonprofit dedicated to dismantling the very barriers that created this moment. Applause began hesitant, then rising like a wave. Cassandra stepped forward to close the conference. Effective immediately, she announced, the Equity Trust Initiative begins its first audit. Corporate ethics across America's largest investment groups. Transparency isn't optional anymore. Reporters shouted questions. Malik raised a hand, silencing them. This isn't revenge, he said. It's repair. And repair starts with truth. As he left the stage, flashes erupted behind him. Eleanor stood alone at the podium, her eyes glistening, as the applause turned into something rare, not spectacle, but respect. The next morning, the world had changed, not with explosions or headlines, but with silence. Every major paper carried the same image. Malik Grant standing beside Eleanor Whitmore as she apologized to the world. The caption read, "From humiliation to reform." Grant Technologies' inbox overflowed with messages from CEOs, community leaders, and everyday people who saw themselves in his restraint. Some offered partnerships, others just gratitude. One message simply said, "Thank you for showing us how to walk away with dignity." Quote, Cassandra walked into his office, a rare smile softening her usual focus. "You should see this," she said, handing him her tablet. The Equity Trust Initiative website had gone live overnight. Within 6 hours, over 100 companies had pledged to join. Malik scrolled through the list, then looked up. "We turned a scandal into a system," he said quietly. "You turned pain into protocol," Cassandra corrected. He leaned back, gazing out the window as the city came alive beneath him. "People keep asking how I stayed calm that night," he murmured. "But calm isn't silence, it's strategy." Cassandra nodded. And it worked. Down below, cameras still flashed outside the building. But Malik didn't care about the noise anymore. The power he carried now wasn't about control, it was clarity. He turned to Cassandra. "Let's get back to work. Justice isn't a one-night event." She smiled. "Yes, sir." Quad. As she left, Malik looked at the framed quote on his desk, his father's handwriting. "Dignity is not given, it's remembered." He exhaled slowly, the city's light spilling across his face. For the first time in years, Malik Grant wasn't fighting for a seat at the table. He'd built the table and left the door open for everyone else. GPT Black CEO 15 phút set. That evening, the city glowed gold under the fading Sunday. From the top floor of Grant Technologies, Malik watched the skyline burn with light. The same city that once doubted his place now carried his name on its lips. Cassandra entered quietly. "They're asking if you'll attend the Gala next year," she said. Malik smiled faintly. "No need. We already changed what that room represents." He turned back to the window. Below, the streets pulsed with life workers leaving offices, street vendors closing shop, a city still chasing its own version of worth. "You know," he said softly, "power isn't about who stands tallest. It's about who stands steady when the ground moves." Cassandra nodded, letting the silence settle. The world outside buzzed with 1,000 stories, but here everything was still. Malik adjusted his cufflink, the same gesture he'd made the night he was slapped, then whispered almost to himself, "I don't need to record what happened, I am the record." The camera of the city faded into darkness, leaving only his reflection against the glass, quiet, unbroken, victorious. And for once, the world didn't argue. It listened,